Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to tonight's episode. The title is Hidden Melodies of the Unleashed Mind. And so, how is the human being shackled by language? The leash is a chain. It is in some sense a cage. And so if we were to think of a hidden melody, I mean, that's kind of obvious. That's like your neighbors having a party. Something's going on where you can't hear it. It's a hidden melody. There are a lot of things in this life that are like hidden melodies. So much human activity is going on, and I consider every human gets access to a tiny bit. You know, it's kind of like the whole internet right now. What people see is like the indexed part, and there's a lot of information floating in the, unconscious of, of a cyberspace reality. Pretty much not everything is processed, and we don't have the time for everything to be processed. The mind is really not an object. The word is a subject, of course. And it's a subject of discussion and will go on to be for a long time. An unleashed mind is a mind that doesn't conditionally exist. Now that is inconceivable to us. It's inconceivable for us to not appear as something intelligent to ourselves. Here's the way I would explain it. Our attention can go back to how nature was just this unconscious movement. And the first effort, the first clue of some conscious thing going on, something more than just nature, I consider was the evolution of the creature's body. And so for me, the design of legs and hands and a face and just being a creature in an elemental reality, these are just elements, guys. It's like the elements on the periodic table and becoming over time. Of course, many of the elements were discovered throughout as time went on, but I'm saying that it's kind of like there is an elemental strange update. There's something sophisticated is occurring. But for me, the objective evolution, that was the wonder. So the fact that we are creatures with design, that's the question. You know, it's like the question is not how the car is moving, which is evolution in some sense. But the question is, why is the car there? Why was there a sort of body? Why should there exist bodies in this universe? Especially feet, fingers, hands. Like this was a question for me, a grand mystery that when you look at reality starting from a pool of energy and then going through a cosmic inflation and then manifestation popping out and cooling down over a long period of time, it kind of makes you wonder, how do we explain the emergence of the design? And of course, this idea, this question is taking people on many routes, right? But for now, the mainstream likes evolution, so we will dance this song of evolution. Not that evolution is wrong, but I think there's more to the picture. So I don't consider the value of objective evolution to just be adaptation or the sort of gradual over billions of years. I mean, you look at like a caterpillar looks at a human being. It's like, guys, here, I'll make a story. One day, one day, a human being was talking to a caterpillar, and the human being was showing off the knowledge of evolution to the caterpillar. The caterpillar sat silently, and the human being was like, yo, man, I evolved billions of years, different parts of the brain developed, it took millions of years and various behaviors and patterns, and that's how I evolved. And the caterpillar's like, oh, cool, cool, cool. Billions of years to evolve. Nice, nice. All right, man, just give me a second. The caterpillar goes into a cocoon, comes out of the butterfly, and he's like, hey, man, I can do it much shorter than you. That means caterpillars win in the game of evolution. It takes us billions of years to just stand up on our legs. Not billions of years, but you know what I mean? Like, it takes a while for us to stand up on our legs, but the caterpillar's like, later, brah, and then becomes a butterfly in a higher dimension. From a two-dimensional mobility moves into a three-dimensional mobile design. It's fascinating, really. Caterpillars are, for me, like, you see them as the epic of poetry. You know how many human beings have used the word metamorphosis? The same way, for example, how Snoop Dogg is a part of, like, hip hop culture, the same way the archetype of a caterpillar going into metamorphosis is part of it. You see, on some level, I believe there's no such thing as entertainment. People just occupy, their attention moves. I feel there's never a solution to what do people want to see. Whatever. There's so much of the world unknown. It's like you just have to try something new and you'll find an audience. I'm telling you. Because the world is much bigger than we have considered it or conceived it. So my view is like, all right, so this unconscious movement of elements, suddenly legs. All right, so let's accept that mystery and move on. And we're like, all right, randomly a genetical design with legs and hands and mobility and breathing and a sort of sophistication. It was as if like it was a seed, right? Right now we're like the fruit of evolution, and we're like, yo, man, from that one seed, now we're like an apple. So what does that mean? When you see apples, that means there must have been an apple seed. Okay, and so when we look at the human design, we kind of wonder about the initial first line of code. You know, kind of my interest for human history was to just go back to the early events, and I laughed. History was like a lot of comedians who they're talking about, like, I see sometimes stand-up comedians. I'm like, yo, guys, go read history books. You'll laugh a lot. You'll realize how we're kind of in a dream. The beginning is vague and the ending is vague. So we are kind of like in the middle act of a film. Suddenly open our eyes. Yeah, human evolution, yay. So after the objective evolution, so far the educational system has enough certainty to talk about the objective evolution, but they don't teach about the subjective evolution. They don't even put those words together. I got shocked, I kind of got disappointed in myself why I didn't caught on Why didn't it catch on to it sooner? You know, when you ask your teachers, you're like, what is this evolution you speak of? And your teacher gives you an answer, but I never wondered about a subjective evolution. That means evolution may satisfy the thirst for wondering how this creature's emergence took place or how it came to be this, but it doesn't answer in some sense. Like there was no, I even at that time I didn't care. Like the word mind, I was like, mind, really? I gotta go make money, bro. You want me to think about mind? So I feel this is what kind of happened, perhaps, you know? This unconscious movement of forms, suddenly emergence of legs and design. The first. Sorry, guys. What I'm trying to say is the objective evolution is the first mystery. Legs, really, cosmos, legs, you know? And so like it's unique, it's strange. I'm not saying it's like this is not a personal comment. This is me just kind of noticing that we're creatures with form, right? We're life forms, right? There's a part of us that is the life which we attribute to the mind. This is why society encourages you not to lose your mind, you know? So the mind is the life. Literally, what your mind is doing is your life. I don't know how your life could be anything other than that, unless you are identifying with another level, deeper depth. So that sometimes when you get depth, the essence stops. So what does that mean? That is like in Jean-Paul Sartre, this existential atheist, this French philosopher, very notable, very like his work is some evenings I've kind of like looked at his work, and he really pinpoints his attention on that there is no essence. So in some sense, there are certain, this is pretty much existential atheism where there is no depth. You know, there is no surface and the depths. There is no like what's in again on the surface and the core, the essence. Like there's no relationship with something deeper, right? And it's not that there's no relationship. Jean-Paul Sartre was saying it's in itself. So he was saying there is no separation between the essence and the surface. Kind of like saying the view of the surface of the ocean, of course, that's one view. But then the view of the depth of the ocean is different, right? So, but they're still connected. So Jean-Paul Sartre was saying like the surface of the ocean and the depths, they're one thing. They're not separate, right? And he's right. But in our perception, there is always like, there's this life kind of projects through a light and shadow game. Pretty much like you should just consider that all human beings, their psychologies is under the filter of cosmological events. What does that mean? That means when we think about morality, what do people think about? They think about the good and the bad, right? You think about, all right, what's the correct thing to do? What's the wrong thing? Oh my God, I made a mistake. Oh my God, I'm going to hope for the right thing. You know, so many avenues, so many ways where the mind is moving to itself. So, anyways, the reason I'm sharing this is because for me, even this wallpaper I've chosen is an embodiment, literally a picture of a hidden melody. And when I say a hidden melody, that's like a self-realization. That's kind of like something that's going on and you suddenly notice it. It's like, yo, there's this song playing in the background of the cosmos and I wasn't hearing this music this whole time. It becomes something like that. So after we became, like literally we got hands and legs and we were like, yes, limbs. We started running around all around the world. After some point, there came a sort of, Jean Lacan, for example, speaks about this in regards to especially like the psychology of the human being in society. But I think it's kind of universal. At some point, this creature was aware it was a creature. It became aware it's a creature. And that's what separates us apart. I feel everything was going normal. Then, whoa, 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 whoa. How is the human being suddenly so much more conscious of its mortality, of its sense of right and wrong? And this right and wrong is, again, I call it the on and off switch effect. So I'm that person saying that all human morality of good and evil is actually coming because we're on a rock, and then light comes and then the light goes. So this kind of shift, this kind of like, what do you call it? Um, Transition shift or something, where it's like suddenly light, yeah, we're all alive. It's like, yo, it's warm outside, let's live, let's build. But suddenly it gets dark, and then it's kind of like in the day you raise your sword, but at night you raise your shield. So it's kind of like I'm attributing pretty much all human psychology to how light, literally this planet has been getting a tan. And just this on and off, like light in the room, on and off, on and off. Literally, look at your biology. The heart is beating, inhale, exhale, eyes close, open. Don't you see this is kind of like light on and off on the planet? So I feel that evolutionary wise, we are actually in the design of the relationship of light. Now, the question gets super complex, guys. The question of the evolutionary source becomes super complex, and it's beautiful because it gets to a point where you just need more philosophers to come and approach it. It's like one of those treasures that you can't lift out of the whole one man. So you need like a community, right? So we're 8 billion minds wondering about what the mind is. Best opportunity to actually go along with the challenge. People fear the unknown. That's why they don't grow. Anytime you fear the unknown, you don't grow. That means anytime in this life you reach a moment, whatever moment, you feel unknown. Unknown doesn't mean danger, okay? Unknown just means your moment is in a certain sphere and range of interpretation. Suddenly something occurs which shifts the variables. And when one variable changes in a system of thought, in a certain approach or a mindset, that one variable can shift the overall mindset. you know? So the mind, its leash, what's shackling it, if the mind was a chained titan, it's language. And language is a field of intelligence's relationship with a particle. So this creature, as Jean Lacan was saying in child psychology, he called it the mirror effect or something, that when you look at it's like when you look in the mirror. For me, before I even heard of Jean Lacan, I was just wondering, all right, this creature, after it got limbs, what could it realistically do? And of course, it's very unfathomable to kind of wonder that far. But I'm in my attempts in my inner realms of perceiving it, it's kind of like, all right, endless movement until it became aware of movement and direction came. So we were first, evolution was occurring through first getting up to speed, then as consciousness emerged, it's like velocity. Suddenly direction is given to the speed. Do you see? So I'm saying the subjective evolution was the birth of the free will. The objective evolution was just the will. It was just something set in motion, right? And so now I've kind of explained to you the objective evolution and kind of Mr. Within's view on the subjective evolution. Okay? Now the subjective evolution is where we are now. Right now. We're still language worshippers. Right now, if people ask you who you are, you say a name. And isn't the act of worship what you have your attention on 24/7? So like I don't understand why all these, it's like an argument that can be made for the concept of worshiping, right? What is it though at its core? And it's literally having your attention on an image, and then that your attention is so long on that image you can't define with any other images. That means for me, I was telling this to my parents when I saw them. I told them that you gotta keep your mind alive. Especially in this world, it's kind of designed to slow down. So if the mind was a sword, you require to sharpen it for the confrontations throughout the day. Now, how do you sharpen the mind? Now, some people are like, yo, let me go get courses, let me go do this and that and this and that and this and that. Let me go, and most people want to invest in themselves, but they think it's only financial. You can ideologically invest in yourself. You can literally look at your ideas, and that's a sort of investment in a new view, you know? So anyways, I told them that you got to keep your mind alive. And the way you do it is that you ask questions. Most people want to give answers. That's what I realized, and I'm like, oh man, it's kind of hard to watch all these gurus throughout history's giving ultimate answers. It's like, thanks man, thanks for drawing a picture that we all can obviously throughout time see beyond. For me, when I speak, I don't speak in full certainty. I have to speak through probability because I have access to my inner realms and the stuff I've seen outside in front of my eyes, but I don't have access to the listener. So when I was thinking of how to give a talk, I was thinking, all right, that could be any person, right? So I realized I have to find the important questions. And it wasn't because of the talk. I actually had the question. You guys don't know. I have sometimes on my life outside of these talks, I write a lot. And sometimes some questions come that are so fascinating. There are sometimes even intellectual questions. That means you're looking at the mechanism of how something works in some sense. For me, rationality is in some sense just acknowledgement of sequence. It's a linear approach. It's a linear lens of perception. But when you want to be rational about like a person's dream, like really, yeah, that giant dragon in your dream, that giant, mythological creature in your dream. It's like, if you were to rationalize it, you're afraid of dragons, but such foolishness, such simple-mindedness, not even simple-mindedness in a decent way, do you know? For me, I was like, I better see what the human being is before my eyes close, before I punch out of this plane of existence. I was like, what is this? And then you come to the great question. So people feel there is knowledge. People, spend their whole lives accumulating wealth just to give it, to a system that all they receive is what they could have received online. And this doesn't mean you shouldn't seek towards education. It just means the education system can update. I'm on some level saying nothing is wrong, but everything can update. Do you see what I mean? Because in some sense, there's no point fighting the past. It's like how a philosopher feels speaking to a religious person, That means a philosopher, like, here's the thing. A scientist may to a religious-minded person appear as an ignorant person. Okay? And to the scientist, the religious person is the One of them is like, this scientist is ignoring God's will. The other is like, this person is ignoring the fact that they're creating God. They're giving the voice to the void, And so there's this double-sidedness, like two sides of the mirror, where the scientist only sees the rational, and the other, perhaps, they think they see the rational, but it's actually irrational. I mean, if you think that this world, like right now, you're a bunch of atoms and you're alive, right? Just like how we say the mind is more than the body, right? So some people looked at the world and they're like, well, wait a minute, maybe the world is more than the world, right? And so their attempt to give it an ideology came as the word God, I find, even though it was through revelation, right? There's so many random patterns. Like when you look at a snowflake, like here, guys, I'll show you. I had the picture of it the other day. I want to show you this, guys. This is what a snowflake looks like. I just want people to take this in. All right? Okay, that's too big. But, oh my God, how did I move this? Alright, here's an example, okay? This is geometry that's in a snowflake. Look at that geometry. That's in a snowflake. That geometry touches the ground and melts instantly out of its design, right? So this geometry is in a cell. Now, what do you think happens to the human mind if there was a sort of relationship that the mind had geometrically was rooted in the different dimensions? For me, it's a shock. It's a shock factor. The same way I look at it, I'm like, you kidding me? I'm on a rock in the middle of nowhere right now? You know? And people in this world are calling nowhere now here, you know? The here and now. For me, geometry is a mystery of the universe. And we're opening up to it. We're opening up, you know, maybe an early bird, but we're opening up to geometrical languages, to geometrical systems, being more intimate with our archetypes. Right now, you may think like you're happy, sad, or something, but it could be that in the future we're like, yo, when you feel blue, you feel like a square. You know, when you feel happy, you're like a circle. You know, when you feel obsessed, you're like a triangle, you know. You know, so I'm saying, and it's like even the infusion, like an emotion would be a square and a triangle and a circle simultaneously, and the person's like, I don't know what to do, you know? So I'm telling you, it's geometry, we have to approach it. It's one of those things. The same way Terence McKenna, for example, went to the Amazons or wherever, and he saw like this shamanic culture, this native Amazonian culture, that they were through plant life having a relationship with their psychology. When you go study the psychology of primitive cultures, you realize they had questions too. Every creature that was conscious wondered and engaged their environment. Like one thing you could be proud of, every person can be proud of their ancestors, regardless of who their ancestors were, that they were creatures. They lived as creatures. They endured through human life. Okay, that's something every person can honor their ancestor for. But now, it's like whatever happened in the past, now is the game to play. And the game for now is it really kind of like, I think we just have to find questions. People no longer are excited for answers. I really feel people don't need answers. All those people who go to India wanting teachers and all this stuff to get ultimate answers to life's suffering, you know, that's pretty much Buddhism is that. Pretty much Buddha was like, yo, you suffer. You can get out of it. There's a way, but it's not physical. It's empty. And then people were like, all right, Buddha, you know, that works, but what about everything? If you notice in this picture, by the way, guys, there's Earth. That's Earth in the back. This could totally be a cyberspace simulation on Earth. Who knows? The picture, I mean. I think language is how we are alive to ourselves symbolically. Now, if the symbol became more geometric than just random alphabet letters, you know, then that geometry could infuse. So this is an incredible concept. Maybe I don't know how many people thought of this, but most people think about speaking to animals. Some people think about speaking like when people speak to their pets, you know. Some people think about speaking to plants like these shamans and native metaphysics, you know. Native shamanic metaphysics, Amazonian metaphysics, you know. So they talked to the forest, nature had a spirit. It wasn't just that the animals moved themselves, the whole moment was moving as if it was alive, you know. So the moment had its own mind. But nobody has thought of a language to speak to matter, to speak to an object. I mean, there have been, in like the archetypes in entertainment and TV and all this, where we've seen the person go to a gate. You see it in certain fantasy works of literature, where the person goes to a gate and is like, says something like, open, you know, open, sesame. Imagine the guy's a sesame seed salesman. He's like, open sesame seed. Open sesame seeds at half price. The sesame seeds salesman went to this. Let me tell you why I'm saying sesame, guys. Because open sesame was in some literary workout. I think it was Arabian Nights or something. So I was thinking like a sesame seed salesman saying open sesame seeds, at half price. Whatever. The subjective evolution made us conscious of ourselves. So we are the direction giver of our lives while we're in them. I feel the metaphysics of cyberspace will be waking up in a program and in some sense finding programmed ways. There's a way we right now can't, as people alive in 2020, really see the devastation of child psychology becoming more mechanical, right? That becomes scary. Imagine there was no laughter, there was no emotion, it was just calculation, calculation. Even when you talk to someone, it was like the human aspect where the imperfect's accepted is missing, Our humanity is just realizing that it's okay to have space. The reason human beings created the concept of freedom is so that they don't feel they're making mistakes all the time. And it's not that we're making mistakes. I mean, everything has an opportunity cost. And sometimes I can't see of doing something better until I try. Literally, if I don't, it's kind of like snowboarding. If you don't get on the snowboard, you can't comprehend how to move in it. So you can imagine all you want, but unless you put that snowboard and go actually the speed of the situation, it's like the difference between generals that succeeded back in the day in war and generals that didn't. The generals that didn't, they were implementing the same strategy everywhere. They were doing the same thing everywhere. But there was certain generals that they realized every environment has its own voice. So it's not that you're like I learned this from Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu was such an alert general that he, in some sense, he was looking at how the environment was even his enemy. Do you know what I mean? That means he was looking at, is the environment good for battle? Should we wait for the opponent to march towards us so they get more tired when we're about to fight, And so there were various tactics. I mean, in some sense, for me, politics was just a chess game of personalities feeling more than life. That's it. On some level, when you look at human psychology's influence, it's fascinating. It's like a knife that could be used to cut fruit, or a knife that could be used to hurt people. It's like a vehicle that could be drawn ignorantly or drawn with utter clarity. That means a vehicle is a big deal because it's energy. It's like you're what, like for example, I don't know how many people drive, but when I drive, it's, of course, after a point of doing anything, it becomes second nature and your instincts come in, your natural intuition. Like if you're someone who's been driving for years, then it becomes a situation where it's like, you don't need to, there's no analysis. It's just intuition at that point. But if you are someone who, I don't know how to say it, I'm just trying to say that there is dimensions to our existence. Not all these dimensions are fathomable. It's as if the mind is a lantern, and as we move in this world, we light up where our attention goes. We engage. Literally, for me, it's like somebody asking, "What's the purpose of a smoothie?" And that same moment drinking it. There is a sort of space. Freedom is a space. Freedom, I think that's the true maturity, that you really see life is just moving. That on some level, whatever way you categorize anything, it's just happening. It's just nature happening, you know? And right now, our civilization is caught with the games of inferior minds. We're still judging individuality. We're still playing dress up. We still haven't cared to suddenly, unleash the greatest questions. I had this vision that the educational system, what is it doing? Children, it's like, isn't it hilarious? Children have the most creative imaginations. When they grow up, they become occupied with such activities of linear structure that they don't have time. They have to abide by the structure, so they don't have time to feel creative. Okay? So what does that mean? That means when children are young, those are the problem solvers. I feel the educational system should not raise a kid of a nation. What is this? Nation is just, we painted the face of the earth, and we think we're advanced. No. It's like the child has to become a universal human being. I'm telling you, because when you simplify things, you come to the universal. Somebody asked Diogenes, Diogenes was like, what up? Diogenes is like, what do you want? And the guy's like, Diogenes, where are you from? And Diogenes says, me, I'm a citizen of the cosmopolites. And this guy suddenly, it takes him a second to just hit him, And he's like, oh my God, Diogenes sees the universe as his home. And back in the day, this dude was like this homeless philosopher that would go challenge Plato with a dead chicken in his hand. Like he would do some next level things, this guy, Diogenes, He has this thing where, it's a testament to the highest, the most royal of philosophers that they would scold kings. Like I'm telling you, it's just the difference in consciousness. Because consciousness is in the sense that it's conditional. We are conditionally conscious. That means literally if my physical cellular existence stops, it's as if there's nothing to be in a condition to even have anything. Right? So, I don't know. I feel that we all feel, actually so many people, their decisions are not in time. Rational decisions, you got to come to time and you got to come to reality. So really, there's no room for emotions. That means it's kind of inhuman. I think what the word human means doesn't mean it knows everything all the time. What the human means is it's a process. It's like literally the universe literally designed eyes to look through, and these eyes named themselves as individuals and lived as individuals, to a point where one day some guy came in a podcast and said, hey guys, are we really these individuals, or is what we think we are, or our value system, is it really an object? People are preparing for their lives as if it's just an objective evaluation, And the religious person is preparing for their life as if it's a, mysterious, revealed, subjective evaluation, but they will realize that that's still it's like the point of this life that it's moving. That means I was like, what is this? Man is made in the image of God, as the religious text says, but at the same time, everything in the universe is with an entropic nature. Like everything is changing, but man is made in the reflection of the creator. It could just be that the human design, the first mystery, maybe, I don't know, maybe the sky and earth one night, the right song came on and, the deed was done, So our minds are endless like the sky, our bodies are as limited as the earth, It's like Mother Earth. People know that Gaia, like in tradition, in kind of archaic mythology, is depicted as a goddess with the feminine energy, And what that means is, the difference is that there's more attention. That means the masculine energy doesn't see its blind spots. the feminine energy sees a lot of blind spots because the gentleness brings observance. That's why, you know, in time they've spoken about it as the gentler sex, for example, women. You know, so I'm saying the archetype, the mythological archetype for the earth was feminine, but the sky was a man. You couldn't get, you know, more manlier than the sky, guys, you know, back in the day in legend. They would say father sky. And it wasn't only the sky, some people would say father time as well. Time seemed to be also an endless force, you know. I don't know, maybe time is the stepfather of and, you know, space is the actual father, yeah. Of course, I'm being playful, but I'm just saying that the moment you get introduced to the idea of fractals, your mind has a geometrical space to move. So in your inner realms, even if you see, for example, let's say there's some people out there, I've seen like some people who, guys, I've seen so many kinds of human beings that there's really no definition to human psychology. It's like weather. It's like, what's the weather on Earth like, buddy? It's like, where of Earth? You see what I mean? Anyways, you know, the chat section is really quiet, guys. I like this. That means the topic is important. People are like actually listening, you know. Guys, there's way more to it, because the unleashing of the mind means experiencing an unconditional nature to mind. And the unconditional is an ultimate mystery, because when we look at our body, we need to abide by, you need to literally go with the biological program. You need to literally eat, you know, drink water, sleep, you know, go up Maslow's hierarchy to maintain your physical existence. Right? But now we're not just a physical existence, we're also a psychological, subjective experience of the physical existence. And really the free will seems to appear from that psychological space. So I'm telling you, who said the world has to be known? All the wars started because one guy was like, yo, it's like this. And the other guy was like, no, it's like this. And they're like, okay, we're going to kill each other until whoever's left, the winner writes history, okay? And then they started killing each other, you know? And of course, it wasn't like that. It was just, you got to see, like, the archetype is kind of like, I personally feel, honestly, guys, you know, this might sound strange, but like, I feel, women all around the world, they think they have to be like men. Nowadays, especially, recently I've been seeing a lot on political correctness, but let me tell you, I'm just sharing a view, of course. I'm just sharing a thought in there. But I'm saying that it's as if sometimes when you try to be like someone else, you miss out on your own greater version, right? And so I do understand that it was kind of like that's the hand that was dealt. That's how history was written, where it was a sort of a patriarchy. Like you could totally say like 7 years ago, 100 years ago, for example, like, yeah, patriarchy, there was misogyny and whatnot, you know? Pretty much it's like men didn't care about animals and, you know, to some degree, and it's not like this for everybody. I mean, like, you gotta understand, the child is not misogynist. No child is born misogynist, you know? It's only the interaction psychology that really makes us feel resistant forces, you know? And on some level, I feel it's like a yin and yang. So when you look at the yin-yang symbol, most people just see like a white dot and a black dot. But imagine inside the white dot, there was another yin-yang symbol. And inside the black dot, there was another yin-yang symbol. And inside their dots was endless tunnels of yin-yang symbols, you know, stretching out, you know. So I'm telling you, it's kind of like, instead of man and woman being forgotten as archetypes of nature, nature's natural archetypes, I feel that it should be a situation where, what was the thing I wanted to say? Just a second, guys. The ideas orbiting around me. Oh yeah, here it is. That in some sense that I was thinking like, don't people want to update their self? Like, do you want to update like someone else, or do you want to update what you are? Right? So I was thinking in some sense the mind gives us an ability to not identify with the biological constitution, right? And because we've declared universal human rights freedom, so it's any way the mind sees itself. Like if somebody tomorrow comes and says, I identify as an actual extraterrestrial, then it would be also like it's freedom. We have to permit it, right? But I'm telling you, there's also different value systems. Sometimes when you try to understand how the artist drew the painting at once, you'll never understand the secrets. But when you go study the painting, you suddenly understand the secrets. And what you understand is that there would be layers and levels of sketching, micro sketching, you know? So for me, I'm kind of looking at it instead of this war between the sexes, even though that's where the tension, for reproduction is built. But I'm saying, that's not a bad thing per se, but I'm saying it's at the same time this idea that instead of man trying to be a woman or woman trying to be a man, and guys, I'm just sharing views. I'm just one human being sharing views, it's like, but I'm saying the idea is we want man to be better man and woman to be a better woman, okay? And it just means it's not about behavior, because if women start doing everything like men, that's the extinction of what women was. Do you see? So to make them equal is a destruction of this long traditional system. And I'm not saying don't be a rebel to the past, but I'm saying be mindful when how you step into the future. Because some technology, some things, it's like a person who's around you where you don't know their value until they leave. I don't know if people have experienced this, So for me, it was like, what is this trying to make these two shapes one shape? I was thinking it's like, it's just an advancement. First of all, you don't have the same physical body as you did 10 years ago. So in some sense, we can have this even more global community being like, why are we identifying with stuff in a changing world? That means like it's because of our fear of lack of exploration of the true nature of the mind. Because we don't know how the subjectivity is really happening. In some sense, we think everything is just an evocation of value. Do you know? So for me, it was like, you see this in, guys, you see this in a lot of movies, like it's like, in a good way, like in Japanese narratives, It was as if like, I don't know how to say it, it's like, on some level, we both need to eat food and drink water. Okay? We need to learn from intense states of life and vulnerable states of life. Now, if we identify gender to just the state, of course it limits, but we still need an alphabet. So it's like one side, it's either like the feminists should forgive and then try to more expand a world where, for example, I don't know how to say it, it's like we have to work together to build something, but while we're working together to build something, we're trying to be exactly each other. And that is nullification. That's literally erasure. So I'm saying like things take a long time it takes a long time to build something, but in an instant you can get rid of it. Now, the questions of human psychology are so deep that instead of people fighting uncertainties, we should wonder about what uncertainty to look at. That means right now, people are being united by answers. Yay, you have the same belief system as me, you have the same ideological jersey as me, nice. We'll be friends. You don't have the same ideological system as me, get out of my lawn. Do you see? And that psychology is so primitive. It is archaic. That means how long are we going to keep doing the same thing in the same way? So that's why I'm constantly saying we have nowhere else left to go other than towards an advanced civilization. And an advanced civilization automatically means the human being's view on civilization has become advanced. So it doesn't matter. Anything you advance, okay, it's as if you can technically say for a microsecond something in that civilization, that was an advancing civilization for a microsecond. You know? That means if there's a trash on the ground and you pick up that trash, that microsecond where you're doing that act is like an advancement, nanosecond of advancement for the civilization. And it's all these micro decisions that on some level, guys, I was like, those people trying to save the world, what world? Do you see what I mean? After some point, your enemy is no longer your enemy because you change. You change. Time heals everything. That means just live on, and throughout time things will get better. Simply because you really have no choice. It's a world where the play button is pressed before you were born. The film is moving on. We arise. It's like you can see the whole species as a script. The script of the film called humanity. And the way the script was written is that endless children were just being born. Just endless eyes. And then we have these eyes and we move our physical bodies, but to what depth, to what vision are we moving it? You know, I mean, I understand a lot of things. I mean, and nowadays I was kind of shocked that it's as if even a lot of comedians, a lot of people were saying this. And I was like, what? Has the mainstream, I like what I'm going to say, maybe a bit controversial, but I think it has to be if it wants to be new. Do you know? So I feel that the archetype of what a man is in some sense has been made a fool. So children are being raised feeling they have this monkey testosterone kind of savage, like, you know, brain. But I'm telling you, it's you are not. You are your observance. You are your observance. You know? So for me, it's like artwork. Can you judge artwork? Really, you can, but it doesn't matter. It's been drawn. A certain biological, my biggest thing is, it's like not to interfere with nature's process. That was like yogic 101, you know, early lesson you get into it. That you let nature be nature. And then after some time of letting nature be nature, you will feel natural rises within you, sea waves of intent, and as you trust your mind, it doesn't reveal itself as an object or a subject. It's revealed as the viewer within the process, a simultaneity beyond locality. That means you can be a space right now. Imagine somebody. You know, all those people thinking they're spiritual, they're like, what are you, man? What do you identify as? Technically, man, beyond time. I'm eternal, bro. Do you know? You know? I'm eternal energy. You know, it's like, what do you want? You want me to be a human being for you? And I'm saying, guys, like, this world is fascinating. For me, it's as if every person is just a unique paintbrush, and the way we live, our contribution helps reveal what the overall picture of humanity is. People should not try, there's a way, something that people think they have to in every moment do something. This was something I was glad I learned it. It wasn't something I learned, like somebody told me. It was something I just noticed that there were some people who they wouldn't let any communication outside of them define them. They were free. They were free in a world where everybody was behaviorally working under some, inner sort of behavioral program, you know? So unleashing the mind, I'm trying to say it's kind of like wondering about the unconditional nature of who you are before language and before any sort of movement or sound. So in stillness and silence, pretty much wondering who you are. Does it get more meditation than that, guys? There's nothing left other than the advancement of civilization. Any human being who realizes this and kind of looks at this, it's as if my soul had honored you before I was born, Because in some sense, what I mean by that is that some things are just nature. Imagine you're walking and there's a puppy, and imagine there's a bunch of kids kicking the puppy, literally kicking the puppy around, and the puppy's freaking out. Now, what happens psychologically that the human being is like, yo, kids, what the fuck you doing? You become like the bark of that dog, I don't mean actually vocally like barking, I'm not saying like bark at kids harassing a dog, How ironic would that be, that's comedy in the making. But I'm saying no, it's a decency thing. It's letting nature happen. It's like that. It's like I saw it in movies and I was like, this is really crazy. You'd see that bad guy kill a lot of people and then he's petting his cat. Like, I'm like, it doesn't get more psychotic than that. Like he's petting his cat as an object, like his furniture, like a pillow, like the catty eye. I'm pretty sure he would, like, do you know what I mean? So it's this balance, I think, that life needs. And the human being, we are designed in such a unique way that I think it does. I'm not saying that just all relationships should be monogamous. I'm just saying that monogamy had a value because it was as if like it takes a lifetime to see, to unravel the mind of the other. That means it was as if like, imagine like, I feel like we are social creatures. A lot of our intelligence, the intelligence I see, like I've seen kids in school, like literally when I was in school, classmates who they were in some sense like the classmate was getting terrible grades, but outside of school, the classmate was an entrepreneur. He was selling t-shirts, the guy, So it was a situation where it was intelligence in one dimension, but that effort of intelligence in that dimension is not applied. It's kind of like seeing all these people in this Twitch gaming scene that's going on. And in this Twitch gaming scene, all these personalities are emerging, playing these video games and, making 200K a year. It's ridiculous and kind of incredible at the same time, But it's kind of like the opportunity of the generation, But what I'm saying is, those people have a precision. The same thing can go with actual athletes, okay? Like for example, think of it as like Ronaldinho. I don't know how many people know Ronaldinho, but Ronaldinho, this man was so ahead of the game. Like, sometimes you watch soccer not because it's like the game and the strategy and all this. You watch soccer because you're trying to see how an individual with limitations can surpass, So I feel, for example, athletes, they don't realize it, but the same intelligence they use to dribble and all this, that has an inner translation. And if they open their polymath vision, it means they will give themselves the same freedom they had in that moment of like dribbling everyone and scoring a goal when, for example, analysis of an object or a subject or anything. You have to constantly, throw firewood for your mind. It's like, my mind's burning! Bring more firewood! Time is the ultimate fire. For me, fire and time are synonymous. The world transforms out of existence. The forms literally shift in their value. We have to open up something that it's been like a slingshot viewpoints, you know. I looked at pretty much the educational system, guys, and I was like, not enough, not enough. You know, I was shaking my head left and right, not enough. And the reason it's not enough is because the human being actually doesn't need education. The human being needs functional skill, needs functionality. That means if you tell your child knowledge is something you're piloting through, then the child will be interested. So you're telling me when I read this philosopher, I'm piloting in that worldview, and when I read this world philosopher, I'm piloting in that worldview, and the parents like, yeah, and the child's like, wow. So you're telling me I can go explore all this uncharted territory, you know? Sometimes when I've read philosophers, I was like, who do these guys write for? Did they write for the future, for the past? And I was like, yo, it's definitely me. This philosopher wrote this, so exactly me. I could see, you know? Trust me, guys, you can have a transcendental ego. It's pretty much you feeling your ego, feeling like you're above history. You're like, history? Are you kidding? I taught history. I taught history, you know? Sorry, guys, I'm being a bit silly. But really what it is, it's a shift of the mind to a more engaging one. The way the world is the world has become more engaging from the distance. You know, this is why there's a sort of decrease in real human communication. It's kind of strange. It's kind of like we're becoming more people, but we're communicating less with each other. And I was thinking this is because the human being needs a certain space. All skill needs space. Literally, before I give a talk or before anything, I just sit there and I honor the spirit of the environment, the room I'm in, whatever it is. Kabir has this quote. He says, many know that the drop merges into the ocean. Many people, that means many people in the mystical context knew that the individual object went towards a union with a mysterious unknown field or dynamism. That means it's like you're existing as an object projecting a subject, but in your dream states, you're a subject projecting an objective experience. Dreams are fascinating. Dreams are, like I'm telling you, just care for your life and its dimensions open up. That's it. And I don't think there's a success route. I mean, biologically, the purpose of life is you're the most up-to-date human so far. Go check out what life is. Literally use your biological evolutionary opportunity to move in the world. Right? Most people, because I feel we're actually living an inner life before an outer life. And I feel nervousness, shyness, all of these are at the gate of this. You know? Right now, I'm speaking to you with the trust of my inner realms. There was a time I didn't trust myself. Because I was like, you know, the world's moving already. Why should I hear myself? So I feel that it's just people understanding the value of what's in front of them. And after some point realizing the value is creative. That means you gotta make decisions. You can't just hover in a world of choices, you know. After some point decisions will be made. Do you know how many times I've come to give a talk, like in these talks, I've come to say something, but literally it's like I've reached a branch that it's like 3 simultaneous ways it branches out. And I just could only choose one to speak about. you know? Now, let us consider that the mind is an instrument, and that unleashing this instrument is an authentic engagement, and in some sense, having the courage and the audacity as a conscious living being to wonder about it all from the beginning. Don't fear this. This is where greatness is really born, when you attempt your own try. You look at let me tell you, an authentic failure is better than a lot of artificial success, you know, because it's life moving. Now the whole debate is the form moving the life? We think that, so we think it's a complete empirical based kind of approach we need after that. If we think we're just atoms, what else can we be really? If we've declared we're just atoms, like really what else is there left? We are atoms probably in a larger context, in a more higher dimensional context. So I think the way so guys, in the chat section, Limitless, uncover the pattern, life is changed. Yo, deep username, man. Limitless says, I honor your expression. Next level evolution is co-creation. Next level evolution is co-creation. Yeah, but the thing is, I'm feeling it's more like a rhythmic abidance. I think literally like how the rock star felt on stage when he was in the zone and just in that moment. The infusion of that moment wasn't an ideological experience. I feel the co-creation we're moving towards is, as we trust our minds, we will have no choice but to also trust the consequences of the mind. Okay, so there's so many people are not responsible for their intelligence. Did you know? They're responsible for their car, they're responsible for everything, every object they own, but they're not responsible for how they're being a subject in the moment. They feel it's just every day you wake up, you're something new. That is the case. You have a new angle often. Like that's the nature of the mind. Heraclitus even spoke about it. No man steps in the same river twice. So, and it's not the same river and it's not the same man. I'm just suggesting that I feel what's going to happen is that we are realizing the mind is not just the brain, because words and sounds and phenomenology and the conditional free will, I have to say conditional, because if there was no human body, there would be no concept of free will, right? If we were not a shape, we couldn't wonder about how the shape moves, you know? So first you need the shape. This is why they called this, if I remember correctly, the cosmological argument, about the beginning of the universe. That it's like, sure, how, like it's pretty much it's not a denial of the Big Bang. It's just questioning in that moment of cosmic inflation after the Big Bang. How did all that stuff just pop? You know, where was the design for all that stuff? You know, it's a design argument. It's an argument wondering about the design of the early design. You know, the chicken came first or the egg, you know? It could be that there was another chicken in another dimension, you know? And the egg just fell in this dimension, you know? You gotta look at it this way, that where in your life have you left space to do something new? And what does that mean, the new? Can you experience something new without changing? Can you watch a film and be the same person afterwards? Every experience is a memory in the making. So it's literally how the attention is holding the moment. To unleash the mind, and if we consider language to be the chain, the leash on the mind, the leash of order on the mind, it's kind of like unleashing your mind, becoming responsible for the unknown, and then realizing you can be free. It's not that fear goes away, it's like fear is like, it just transforms. That means something, you're afraid of it, but suddenly you think it's a bunch of atoms. You'd be like, I'm afraid of a bunch of atoms, really? You know? It's not that fear. Fear is very natural, of course. I mean, like caveman feared fire. But they were also fascinated to wield it. So it's that the moment man gets introduced to a new dimension of experience, he moves forth to integrate it with his whole dimension. So we technically are creatures designed to try something and to mastery, to reach it at a certain level of skill. Now, people throughout their life, think about all the things that they try to do and how many of those things they succeed in and how many of those things they're just attempts, they're efforts. Unfulfilled efforts. I could tell you, like, on some level, I was like, what's happening to me in this life? And I noticed every day is passing by, and in some sense, my existence is based on my decisions. You will eventually conclude you have to drive your life. You have to pilot your attention in this space-time continuum. And you have to abide by certain biological programs of surviving. But at the same time, now that the dimension of the mind has opened, it's as if that unleashed mind would be endless creativity. Right now, creativity is in doses. Creativity is in units. The person gets a vision of a painting, draws it. But there can be a sort of endless valve that is open of creativity. And so on some level, if I remember correctly, Rabindranath Tagore gives us some insight into this, that he says, it's like creativity is an emotional surplus. So if you saw yourself as a cup, and we put this cup under a tap, and we open the water, and the water would fill up the cup, fill up the cup, fill up the cup, reach the brim. Imagine we stop the water right at the brim. Okay? That is, you can say also the archetype of Rama. I would say, I would in a parallel way connect, but I would say that is the perfect human being, balance. Now, creativity is not balance. It's not balance of static ideals. It is the balance of dynamic forces. That means imagine like that airbender. I mean, you don't need to even think of it in the idea of an airbender with a kid with an arrow to his third eye. I mean, how much more obvious. The kid's had a tattoo of an arrow on his head. And he's like, I wonder what this birthmark means. It's an arrow, bro, to the third eye. But anyways, the concept of the before the airbender, it was the concept of the mage. And the mage, you find it in more, I would say, European lore, European metaphysics. Of course, Christianity is included in that. But I'm saying there was a branch of, for example, during the time of pantheism and druidry, where people were just like it's like society was the hidden dimension. As if like Tarzan. Tarzan was technically a druid kind of being. Like all the apes were looking at him like, you're definitely something different. You know? And Tarzan's like, I'm one of you guys. And they're like, no, man, you got hair. We're all just gorillas, you know? In regards to nature, it was through fairies, elves, and wisps, mystical spirits, and whatnot. That was more like, I would say, Scottish metaphysics could move towards that. Terence McKenna, the scholar, his metaphysics at some point moved towards that, you know? And really, for me, if you want to find an image in the transcendental, you can unlock endless doors. The doors never end. It's the journeyer that really dictates what happens. So it's like the person realizing there's two types of mastery. One is called world mastery, one is called self-mastery. Let's say it like that, because the human being is an oscillation between self and world. Like some days, you know, like what that person being like, you know, sitting on a roller coaster, technically the world is moving yourself. Okay, but that person in some sense building, or like Edison inventing the light bulb, that's the self moving the world, right? And these two relationships are always there, right? When you see a person, sometimes when you notice people speak, people don't just, I have this firm view that people are never speaking to just others. You can't speak without hearing your own self. So technically, whenever a person speaks, their subconscious is running this program as if they're their own audience. But most people are not conscious of their subconscious, so they feel that there's a disconnect. They feel they're this small thing in this big thing, and the big thing is like, how can you see yourself as a small when you're in a big thing? You know what I mean? I feel, guys, knowledge is dynamic. I feel like philosophers have been trying to explain skydiving through words only to realize that it's like you gotta dive into the sky. So I'm telling you, these talks, even though I have no choice, I mean, that's just how far the technology is, right? But right now, I'm just sharing, um, I'm sharing how my eyes have opened so far. And that hidden melody is cosmic activity, and unleashing the mind is when the individual activity realizes it's inseparable from it. So one day I laughed really loudly, you know. And the reason I laughed was I was like, how can I fear death? How can I fear change? How? Can someone tell me how you can fear change? How can you fear it though? How can the fear continue? That means it's like, after some point, I'm like, okay, it's more like, am I the universe simultaneously as the universe exists on an existential level? Am I inseparable from all cosmic phenomenology? Or am I experientially separated? It's like, what if I'm like a mobile part of the earth that's moving, but in some sense, our experience is individual consciousness, our existence is collective. That means even if we weren't social creatures, we would after some point wonder why there's so many different trees, why there's so many different squirrels or whatever, you know? Of course, after watching Rick and Morty, we should be careful how we speak about squirrels, you know? So Kujam says experience is subjective by individual perception and awareness. So experience in knowledge leads to understanding, giving foundation to grow in wisdom. Yeah, it's the momentum. It's the gears moving. Exactly. So, guys, Kujam says, I never learned what I learned in experience until many years later when I had the understanding to learn lessons from my experience many years ago. I've experienced this in regards to writing. So I've written a lot of stuff, and sometimes it's like a lot of it is just in notebooks in my drawer. And it's like, I've written all this stuff, but it's a situation where like years go by and I just flip this page and I read that same quote and I instantly remember how I wrote it, but I see a totally new dimension in it. Very true. Sometimes we don't know, we can't see our mistake before we make it. And before we make it is a moment after the action. But on some level, who is the mistake for if we're all changing and the idea of the self is seems to be an inner phenomenon? Like for me, I'm like, you serious, Cosmos? Light going in my eyes? Me having dreams when I close my eyes? What is this? What is this game of endless dance with images, appearance, and fading? It is the opportunity of the armies of humanity's next great innovation. And when I say armies, I'm saying the minds of people. Right now, we've experienced collective movement like, like let's say sports again, like 11 players facing 11 players, soccer, But now imagine it's a situation where it's like 8 billion species playing a game against how unknown the universe is. And believe it or not, I feel in the future there could be this religion hilariously called the religion of mystery. The religion of mystery. And they're like, what do you guys believe in? We believe it's a mystery. And they would never be wrong. You know? you know? This mysterious God came with a mysterious message. That's the religion of mystery, guys. Where every episode and event in it is mysterious. Because really that's what it is. It's light in the room perceiving. That means man had to know language before revelation could come. That means the alphabet was being designed, was in the making. That means it's like sometimes I think life is so fascinating. I was thinking about it. Now, some people may not perceive it like this, but I feel there's a karma, but this karma is not the psychology's karma. It's just how the moment comes to happen, right? And in some moments, I've literally felt physically all right, just this emotion, like just be a watcher of the moment, right? And there's been times where I felt like go be an active communicator in the moment, right? Go attempt advancement of communication. But then there's been times, I'm telling you, where when I close my eyes, I am not an object. In that very moment, in that pitch black abyss of the moment, I am not an object. The way my imagination comes across to me, I don't see the picture. It's like I'm seeing with different eyes in a different dimension. Do you know? It's as if like the light of this, it's like the light goes in our eyes, but because the reality could be multidimensional, that means it's pretty much a coin flip, guys. Nobody knows. Because we're all kind of left in our own bubble at first. And when we get out of our bubble, very few people can endure existence as an unknown traveler. Like literally, it's like, can you literally be comfortable with how you're an unknown phenomenon right now? If you can, you deserve to, you will pull out the Excalibur of knowledge if you are not afraid of the unknown. Skill really comes because it's not that skill is something somebody else has that others don't. Skill is somebody is just seeing something that you could also see. But there are some moments where the mind, I've literally entered the room and I've literally felt, why am I having this thought? Like sometimes it happens. Sometimes it's kind of like the coolest thing to do. Literally have no thoughts, be a watcher in the moment, go in the room and suddenly just see how you feel. Those feelings will translate something. So I feel it's like if the world is multidimensional, that means there is another ecosystem we're existing in. We just can't be, we're not conscious of it. So that means your imagination is another room you're in. But this room is not in the three-dimensional space-time continuum. I think it can't be in time. It's like, let me tell you, science is going this horizontal exploration. Mysticism is going a vertical exploration. You know, scientists want to see how the world led to the self. The mystic wants to see how the self is leading to the world. You know? I'm just saying, we've so easily forgotten about the potential of the species and the kinetic display of just like kinetic energy, because this is the idea of human beings. You can even say humanity is a kind of energy, you know? We're energy conscious of itself in certain packaged, in a certain form of life. We are a life form. It's like we have no choice but to keep coming back to this. That there is one dimension where all the forms are visible and you're even aware of your physical body, like right now, but there's also all this room to move as a subtler format of yourself behind your eyes. And so that's the mystery. This is why I don't want to deny, like I feel secularism, these are all chess pieces of history. History is making moves, guys. History's making moves. Who knew? History goes for walks too, you know? Your mind is your gift. It is the only gift that can't be opened from the outside. Now, this doesn't mean we're all looking at that kid telling Neo that the spoon bends. We're just recognizing that the mind, again, conscious evolutionary objective opportunity. Great. We're in a form. Now, this life, this is the interesting part, that after you have imagined right now all your physical desires and issues were all solved. Imagine right now we were living in a sci-fi future where you had technology that you would just drink this juice and your body would be the healthiest body ever imaginable, you know? So now imagine you don't have to worry about your physical survival. So the reason I said that, just to consider and relax on, we don't think about physical survival for a second, and then think about the survival of the mind. You know, it's very easy. The body needs food to eat. The body needs to have a relationship with what's in front of its eyes to survive. But I feel the mind needs to have a relationship behind its eyes to endure. So that relationship behind your eyes, technically it's been your identity. And the kind of model that civilizations this is like the first prototype we're experiencing, Civilization 1.0. In this Civilization 1.0, it's kind of like you wake up at first in a playground, but then when you are old enough to be conscious of the environment, then you wake up to a battlefield. That battlefield means that there must come various series of efforts. Life gets pushed into this game where your effort defines the skill. That means it doesn't matter if it takes you 1 hour to finish a painting or 10 minutes to finish a painting or like years to finish a painting. It's just effort. Get somewhere. Now that getting somewhere does lead to this idea like, okay, I gotta fight my way through the crowd to reach the front of the stage, But that's the kind of economical system we have going on. But I feel when you really look at the human being, when we look at a film, we get transfixed. We literally become those characters as the viewers when we watch a film, a good film. A good film, you're like, yo, what's going to happen next? You don't want like something bad to happen to the good guy. If the filmmaker's done his job, you forget that you are there. You only see the actors there. That's a good director. That literally, it was like a shamanic ceremonial moment where the person saw a pixelated duplicate of another parallel realm. Literally, when you play a film, you're watching a reality simulation, right? The mind moves in silence, but it doesn't move as a shape. The mind moves in noise, in sound, as a shape. Therefore, the greatest relationship man can have with sound is to give it a body. And that would literally mean geometrical bodies. That would be the earliest prototype. So if man was to see sound as a conscious sphere, that means imagine that moment the piano player pressed the piano key and that chord or whatever, the sound of that chord, it was as if for a second in another dimension, imagine, that chord was a space, a sphere where the infusion of sound, like a unique chord, was a life. That means imagine that piano, like someone's playing something on the piano, but in another dimension, you're changing the weather. I think it's an incredible time. I think the turtle is in its shell. And not the turtle that civilization is built on its back, but the turtle which is the free will. Free will, the shell is the past. Anytime you don't try something new, you literally have gone into your shell of the past like a turtle, like a scared turtle. Now, when you endure, when the turtle keeps its head up high and just looks at the horizon, you see the massive movement of clouds. You see the endless micro battles that it takes for a simple victory. Then you realize that there's no fear in a multidimensional world. There's just navigation. This is a sort of, you can say, even if you were an extraterrestrial being, this would apply to you. That you recognize that it's pretty much the oscillation between chaos and order. That means an advanced civilization, they will be in a dimension-wise beyond the framework. What does that mean? That means three-dimensional beings are looking at two-dimensional beings, and when a two-dimensional being enters a three-dimensional space, literally there's this idea that you are born as a new body as you perceive something new. So it's kind of like this argument that even though the self doesn't have a body, like a subject isn't a fixed shape, but it's as if like sometimes you can open your eyes in the Pure Lands. And I feel if you just remain in that decency resonance, the Pure Lands find you. So what does that mean? That means don't, like, life is like weather. If you have too many plans for it, sure. I mean, this doesn't mean don't have strategy. It's just, I'm just saying if you have too many plans, it's like weather, you know? You realize the weather changes and you step outside and you feel the weather, then you go back inside and dress for the weather, you know? So that's what I'm saying. So belief systems are saying like it's just raining all the time 24/7 or it's only sunny 24/7. It's not. It's a changing system with various variables. And these variables sometimes connect and they lead to great potential. Sometimes they disconnect and potentials are lost. Technologies are lost as history writes its books, you know. So anyways, guys, that's as far as this talk would go. Hidden melodies of the unleashed mind. Literally, it's being free before you knew what the concept of freedom was. So I'm gonna open it up to Q&A, guys. This is the end of the talk. Pretty much, if we were on that boat, we've reached the end of the picture. So I'm gonna open it up to Q&A. If anybody has a question, comment, you know, they want me to even restate something, here just to set it in the stone of the wall of the chat section. Guys, so let's make it 10 minutes. I don't know why. I feel it should be 10 minutes tonight. So for 10 minutes, I'm around. Anybody has a question, they can ask. But the talk is over, and thanks for listening. What I mean is, like, if anybody has a question, I'll unmute it and my attention will come to the chat section. But I'm around for 10 minutes. Blessings. Alright guys, a question that technically I don't think it's an actual question, but it's asked, and to honor the law of Q&A, we must attempt an answer. Kujam says, the question of questions, why question anyhow? The answer, my first answer is why not question? But my second would be because questions open worlds, answers close them. So when somebody asks a question, for example, I've spoken about a hidden melody, somebody may suddenly feel that their inner dimensions is like music to them or something, and they could suddenly share it. That would be a question where it's different. Like me from on my side, the question is showing me how the mind of the viewer actually sees the world to even formulate the question. So the question kind of shows how it was set into motion. Not how you can see how it was set into motion. So a question is kind of saying why go explore beyond the clouds? Why should we question? Why should we want to see more than what we see so far? So a question is the most noble thing, And poor children in the world, they raise their hands and the teacher never picks their question. Their question is born on the spot and dies on the spot. So I would say questions are the acknowledgement of the unknown. It's the only way to evolve. Something's definitely questioning itself. Like the ape was like, can you imagine, like we were just four-limbed entity, four-limbed creature, and then we're like, I've had it with the smell of dirt, and we get up. We get on our two legs. We do something extreme. Like people doing parkour now and evolutionary animals standing up on its two legs. That was like, yo, no way. Like that was like the most intense acrobatic activity that we could have kind of noticed, For me, the concept of the soul was, of course, a deeper essence. So it's kind of saying, why wonder about the other? Why wonder about the knowledge being different, or the eyes perceiving the knowledge different? The questions are sacred. But there is also something that they say, if they make you ask the wrong question, they don't have to worry about your answers. I heard this from Elon Musk. And what he really means is that it's like a lot of I think 90% of hard work is just finding that question, finding what's the most important thing you can do. And then 10% is just endless endurance. The mystery doesn't become common once solved. Once solved, you open up to a bigger scale of the mystery. Once you solve the mystery, then you kind of see her older sister, So I'm saying it's a situation where it's like it's the mystery. The mystery has deeper levels. There's different movements. It's kind of like you fathoming what life on, like how Saturn's ring visually would be if you were like floating right beside it. It's left to abstraction, yet it has some grounding to something real. The yin-yang symbol, I don't see it actually as a two-dimensional. I see it as a third, three-dimensional, endless kind of coiling phenomena sometimes. So for me, the yin-yang symbol, I think it's because I liked soccer too much as a kid. It's a soccer ball, That means where you engage the moment is like how, it's like the energy's direction. Really, it's the energy's direction. I mean, when you even think about it in Tai Chi, it's all about focus and attention and the constant test of the value system to the new information. For me, the yin-yang symbol, something that I realized was that it's all in one circle. So in one moment of life, we're experiencing the yin-yang of the objective realms and the subjective realms. There is a subjective self, which if there's like a little bit of the object in the inner realms, the ego, and then there's a little bit of the subject in the outer realms, which is the free will. Do you see how fascinating that is? There is, I feel we're way more multidimensional than we all think we are. And I feel we're not even thoughts. Thoughts come and go. Everything changes, really. We're witnessing it as some field-like intelligence. Because isn't it weird? We start off as individual objective beings, but all that we care for is like how our civilization, our family, our just something, what's valuable to it's pretty much like asking the question, what is valuable to 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere? That sentence calms me down. I could be having the worst day and I'm like, it can't get any worse than it can't get any worse than being, you know, on this rock in the middle of nowhere and there being no, like Fermi's paradox, no extraterrestrials, nothing, just this vast silence. It's either we're in the wrong room. That means it's, again, the world is multidimensional. There's the aliens are per se, not even beings in time, maybe. We don't know. The unknown can be given any mask, but after some point, it's the experience that really clarifies the outcome of it, right? When you say, I don't know how it can be a pump. What is it pumping? Consciousness? So the yin-yang symbol is pumping consciousness. I think that, like, I would see it as if you are oscillating between, as I would say, the unknown and the known. The yin is unknown, the yang is known. The yang is expressive, the yin is observant. You know? The yin is your relationship with your inner realms. The yang is your relationship with what's in front of your eyes, your outer realms. The inner realms have been reduced. They are saying it's kind of hilarious. It's like first they got rid of imagination. Imagination, it's nothing. You know, that kid randomly throughout class getting a daydream. The teacher's like, yeah, this kid's wasting its time. Pa! Ruler hits the table. The kid snaps out with the daydream. Right? But what was that? What was that kid's mind like a self-ceremony doing that it was daydreaming? It was suddenly caught in the ambience of the inner realm's possibilities. So I won't disagree. I won't say, Robert, that it's mechanical. I would say it's geometric. I perceive it more as it is, like, I could totally see how the geometry can become mechanistic. You know, I mean, like, earlier in this talk, I put the picture of a snowflake. Like, that's super geometric. I feel there's a hidden geometrical language that if we really succeed in tapping into this geometrical language, it would be the ultimate revolution. It would be the geometrical revolution in human psychology, mass human psychology. It's not that, I mean, I don't know who laughed. I mean, on some level, even like certain notable scientists, they've been wondering if reality is a simulation, you know? If it's a simulation, it could be mechanistic. It could be that what we're experiencing as seasons is literally like a program in another dimension. You know what I mean? That means our world has a parallel self. It's not like only you have a parallel dimension, like one dimension you're combing your hair left, one dimension you're combing your hair right. So you realize it's like what about the world? Is the world in one dimension spinning, you know, clockwise in the other dimension, counterclockwise? Could like, do you see what I mean? Once you give freedom to one dimension, you can't go to another dimension and not perceive that freedom. Interesting. So that's my comment. I don't know. Robert says the yin-yang symbol is a consciousness pump. I mean, technically, if you make a pump and you called your company consciousness, you know, and this pump is colored like the yin-yang symbol, and it's actually a pump, like it's a patented product, which I don't think you can patent the yin-yang symbol. Like, Buddhists would be like, what? But you can technically use the design of it. The design of it is different from the implication of the experiential value of knowing that balance. Guys, I feel before any sort of mathematics, it should be considered maybe that it's like what is there. So it's like when you go in a room that the light is like lighting up, half the room is lit, then you have to wonder about the shadows before making conclusions about the room. So I'm saying that we have to wonder about the unknown potential of the mind, and it's kind of strange because if we experience, let's say we somehow explored somehow, and there came the first human being that suddenly opened their eyes in another dimension, and we were suddenly like, yo, there's more to the earth than we could see, but if you wear these glasses, you see that other dimension. And we suddenly see there's been this parallel civilization in another dimension simultaneously occurring while this civilization's been occurring. Imagine they are just in the same space. It's as if two people wrote on the same line. One person wrote a sentence and the other person came and wrote another sentence. Now imagine two writers, like this is not possible, but it would be kind of like on this glass. Imagine we get a giant glass, okay, glass kind of plane, and we have two writers on the both sides with markers, and they both have to write on the same line. So they can't go to the next line until the other writer finishes. You know? So what would that mean? That would mean that there is two simultaneous storylines in the same moment. You have two different eyes to see the same view. The yin-yang symbol is pretty much that the mind is actually, as Rumi would say, the wings of it are chaos and order. So your mind is like a bird. The character requires chaos in order to exist. If you completely get rid of chaos, you'll be bored. If you completely get rid of order, in some sense, you'll be destroyed. You know, so these are the options. And we have to somehow pilot through some sort of sphere of decency enough to advance the civilization. So I feel there will be this geometrical revolution. I've called it the multidimensional renaissance. I think it's just a natural thing that's happening, but and I'm an early bird kind of talking about it. But what it is, I'm like that blue jay that accidentally got into a time machine, you know? So many people have thought what their spirit animal is, you know? For me, it's as if every emotion has a different spirit animal. Moments where I've suddenly felt strength, it's as if I've heard the loudest roars of lions coming from behind me. Moments where I have felt weak, it's as if I've kind of felt as if like a wounded. It's like wounded kind of corpse in the battlefield of the jungle. You know, life leaves you in many ways. Life treats you in many ways. It's just after some point we see the system, we update it. And the only way we can actually update it is by implementing, inputting in this system, in this information system, new information. That's my view. That's my view, that if I was like literally, and I was thinking like if there was an alien looking from outside our clouds trying to decide if human beings were able enough to communicate with the aliens, and that alien would probably look at our planet and they would see if we're fighting with each other, the aliens would be, these guys are freaking animals, you know? And we'd be like, oh shit, our whole evolutionary psychology, our evolutionary biologists are all telling us we're animals. And it's not that we're not, but we're more than just animal. We're animal plus unknown. The mind is unknown, you know? So guys, it's been over 10 minutes. I don't think anybody has a question. I want to thank everybody for listening. And really just realize that the more communication happens on Earth, the more badass of a civilization we become. Okay? Like, you want to see what a rock star civilization is? It's a civilization that is fearless when it comes to navigating the creativity of the life force. That means you got to ask yourself, should I live every day in a way where I am seeing something new, or am I just living the same day over? Technically, you may be in a certain existential condition of a repetition. Like, even like we can say the same way the person's like, gosh, you know, every day in the cubicle. It's the same way we're like, gosh, every after the seasons, it's like this endless winter, summer, spring, fall. It's like, really? You seasons don't end, huh? You seasons don't take a break, eh? So I'm saying, literally, it's just the mind's relationship with the cyclical, with the repetitive. For some people, it brings contentment. Some people, if they repeat something a lot of times, they suddenly awaken to it's kind of like that's Beethoven. That was Beethoven's path, where he said, "Don't just practice your art." This is what Beethoven said, guys. Don't just practice your art, but force your way into its secrets, for it and knowledge can raise man to the divine. So much blessings. You know, your life is your art. And every moment you're getting feedback of your skill, of your ability with it, of your strength in it, how much you are aware the world is changing you, and how much you're aware that you're actually living in the world. You know, and the whole point of consciousness is that after 4 billion years, again, I gotta keep going to this, because after 4 billion years, you're telling me I can direct this phenomenology? For me, free will, it even transcends the human frame of the body. It's literally the whole moment for me. The moment is the freedom, the will is the manifestation in that freedom. So you kind of see freedom as if like, yo, when I was a child, was there would I get, it's like when you go to you can, like a newborn baby, you say insulted, the newborn baby just stares at you like, yo, man, you really doing this to me? I'm saying that the child doesn't see. The child doesn't see and doesn't comprehend the language. So there was a moment where you existed as a creature before there was language, and I'm telling you that moment where it was when the mind wasn't individual, and literally the mind is your whole moment. So there is literally an inseparability of your free will's universe and actually what you see in the moment. So anyways, guys, I hope this was helpful, you know. You know, I'm trying to think, instead of questions and answers, what could it be updated to? What could be better than a question? That's a good question. What could be better than a question? I mean, it's experience, ultimately. It would be a question on experience. So we would say experiences and observations instead of Q&A. Because anytime you question something, it's an entrance. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and namaste.